Hi everyone, I'm Josh. Welcome today to my special Christmas episode about A Christmas Carol, specifically the one narrated by Frank Muller. I'm a big fan of A Christmas Carol. I've been rereading it probably every year for the last 5 or 6 or more years. It's become a regular tradition for me. One thing I like to do is try different audiobook narrators because it's such a popular book. There's a large array of readers out there, narrators. And I'm a big audiobook reader. If you don't know that, surprise, I am. Almost everything I read is on audio. And I decided or thought it would be a nice yearly thing to do, since I'm already reading the book, to do a yearly review of the new audiobook narration that I read, because I usually try a new narrator when I'm listening to it. Granted, I haven't always do that. In fact, this year's one, Frank Muller, was one I've definitely heard before. One of the first narrators I ever heard, actually. I just wanted to start this sort of yearly tradition where I just review the one that I listened to and tell you what I thought about the book, but more about the narrator themselves. So without further ado, let's talk about A Christmas Carol, narrated by Frank Muller. So to start out with, I wanted to just give some general thoughts about A Christmas Carol, something I think I'll do, just give the thoughts that sort of stood out on this reread, considering it's like my upteenth time rereading it. So this year, I think what really stuck out to me was asking myself, what is it about this book that really stands the tell of time? Why is it that I love it so much? Because it's not as if it is the most modern take on the story. In some ways, it's rather mundane, this idea of someone being able to just change and do good, especially after they have to be threatened with basically being forgotten and causing so much damage in the process. But I still think it is a fundamentally uplifting and inspiring idea of we will inevitably die, and maybe you don't care what the world thinks of you when you're gone, but you still have to reckon with the reality of the impact that you leave behind and the one you have while you're here. And to me, that is such a major idea. One of the reasons why I love Octavia Butler's Earthsea duology, the idea of God is change, because that's just a major idea in this book, the one that makes it really stick out to me, one that's just a reminder of how it's so important for us to make the change that we're capable of making, make the world the kind of world we want to live in, rather than convincing ourselves that it is the world that it is and then using that as a justification to act the way we want. And so that's just a major idea that I think that I left with this book in this current reread. It's an idea I've thought about before, obviously, and there's a lot more I could say about it, but like I said, this is more about the narrator than the book itself. So let's talk about Frank Muller, now that we got that out of the way. Frank Muller is a classic narrator, someone that many people may have heard of because he was around in the 1980s or before. In fact, that's when this book came out. 1980 was when this book was released by Recorded Books. Muller, I think, read several books by Charles Dickens. In fact, one of the critiques, if it is a critique that I have of Muller, is that he didn't have a more varied library of books that he read. Sure, he read a lot of genres. In fact, my earliest reading of him was the Left Behind series, like when I was going through my Christian phase of my life. And I just absolutely adored him. I obsessed with him. And even after I stopped being a Christian, he was an author, a narrator rather, who I stuck with because there's a few things I love about him. One, that graspingly masculine voice. There's something really pleasing about it. But more than that, more than just that natural voice he has, it's the ability to encapsulate the emotion of the scene, of the text, of the voice. It is, in my opinion, very important for a narrator to be able to not just embody the emotion of a quotation when you're speaking for a character, but the in-between lines. Because when we're reading a good story, it always has emotion written in every line. And the ability to convey that effectively and with just true art is a real skill, and something that not everyone has. And I think that's what makes him stand out as one of the best narrators I've ever heard. He used to be my all-time favorite. Now I wouldn't say that, partly because I just sort of evolved to like different style, like not quite as masculine and raspy as I used to like, even if I do enjoy it. And also partly because it just doesn't have as much breadth in what I would like to listen to. Plus, he's not around anymore, unfortunately. Other things that I love about Muller, of course, is that he also just has a nice breadth of character voices. It's always somewhat picky, I think, or rather very subjective on what voices you like. For me, I just want them to be distinct and varied, and I think he does a good job of that. I won't pretend that when he has a woman's voice that he sounds like a woman, no. But he is clearly clearly different, and to me it's sufficient to make me feel extremely immersed in his works. He's just someone that is just so easy to love in how he narrates this book. As far as critiques, I think, again, the two major critiques of Muller, like I said, is that he didn't branch out a bit more in the type of books that he had, that we don't have more of him. And maybe the only one left is that this book was recorded in 1980. It is completely listenable. You can listen to it. There's no real problem there. But it is noticeable that it's not a modern production. Like, you can tell it was on a probably cassette tape at the time, even if there is no noticeable artifacts. I think it's just part of like his raspiness it kind of helps hide it because he's naturally raspy. I think it probably adds a bit of that raspiness to the sound. Nevertheless, this is one, again, that I could easily recommend, and I absolutely do. Thanks again for watching. Let me know, have you listened to it, and if so, do you have a favorite narrator for that, or a favorite narrator in general? Again, this is about as much as my love for A Christmas Carol as it is for audiobooks. Thanks again for watching this very short review. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great and happy Christmas and happy holidays. Bye.